Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys enjoy the video today. Today, the Warriors, unfortunately, our 2025 season has come to an end against the Penrith Panthers, 24-8. But I wanted to come on here pretty much as close to unedited as I can be, guys, so I can chuck the video out and you guys can get my raw and unfiltered view on the Warriors right now, that game in general, and how I'm feeling about the future with the New Zealand Warriors. And guys, also, if you want to keep in touch, go on to Wise Up TV, guys. Look it up, Wise Up TV. It's in my description down below as well. Click on it, like and subscribe, and tune in for Tuesday night. Me and Levon will probably be breaking down this game, but also breaking down the season in general and where we can improve, where, you know, why we should be happy about the season that happened, and you know, if things probably went a little bit of a different way, who knows what the season could have been. It does feel like a season of what could have been, but we'll get through that very shortly. But may as well get through the game that was obviously the first final of the year. Obviously, you know, the Melbourne Storm versus the Dogs were on a Friday night, but for us, it was the first finals week this year. What an amazing year to even get into the final series, and I'll get into more of that in the future of this video. But 24-8 end up being here in this one. You know, tries coming from Isaiah Papali'i, Brad Snyder, Casey McLean, and Brian To'o to put this one to bed for the Penrith Panthers. For our boys, we got Leka Lasima, and obviously the conversions with Tanner Boyd with a penalty goal, and that kind of giving us the 8 point there. But I felt like I'm really proud of the boys. That effort that we showed out there in that game, I thought was top notch. Like, we're looking at a game that, you know, a lot of fans coming into it wrote us off straight away. And I felt like, you know, listening to the, I don't want to be that Warriors fan, but listening to the commentary, it did feel like that it was more of a marvel on what the Penrith Panthers were going to do to us. And it felt like, you know, when they had a lot of their bigger moments, it was a bit more of like, well, this is what meant to happen sort of thing. But I felt like this game was a little bit more of, you know, I want to give my boys a little bit more credit, obviously being a Warriors fan, guys. And, you know, you guys can obviously slate me in the comment section for it. But I want to give, like, you know, more credit to the Warriors and how we kind of dictated a lot of the game in this one. I felt like, you know, Penrith Panthers ended up being the better team on the night, and like I'm not shying away from that at all. You know, they have Nathan Cleary that unfortunately is leagues above our halves that we have at the moment at the club, and I feel like he was one of the major differences for the Penrith Panthers in this game and his kicking game. But you know, at one point here, 8-12, you know, we started to find a lot of momentum and pretty much two, you know, opportunistic tries for the Penrith Panthers. You know, you can argue, obviously, through a little bit of a lack of moments from us, but also, you know, a massive uptick for the Penrith Panthers. That forward pass try that, you know, obviously, guys, like, my honest opinion on it as a Warriors fan, I'm going to obviously say that was forward. I believe it was forward no matter what. I had neutral fans obviously saying it was a forward pass. But in that moment, you got to give all the credit to the Penrith Panthers to be there in that moment. You know, the bounce of the ball happens. It was all pink jerseys there. We try to make the scramble on our defensive read, you know, Roger, Lecker and all that getting back in time, and, you know, Chance coming back in late. But Brian To'o obviously putting us to bed with giving it to Casey McLean, pushing that margin out a little bit further, and then we'd have to obviously change our game plan a slight different way. Obviously, we're going to have play a little bit more attacking footy. Tanner Boyd came off the field. So Tamati Martin had to step up in these moments. And I thought, obviously, we're throwing the ball around. We had a little bit of a success in these moments as well. But unfortunately, with a knock-on from Leka Lasima, who was absolutely incredible in this game, in my opinion, and Brian To'o took it to the house, end up pushing this margin out. And it didn't really, the scoreline for me didn't represent what the game was in general. I thought the Warriors were right there with the Penrith Panthers all the way through this contest. You know, some moments in this game where we did switch off defensively on our try line. But other than that, I thought our defense was pretty close to flawless in moments in this game. You know, we're tussling it with pretty much as close to full strength Penrith Panthers squad as you can get, other than Mitch Kenny. And I thought the boys, you know, really handled themselves with a lot of class out there. With, you know, as I said, the game hung in a balance at 12-8, and it really did feel like the Warriors were swinging momentum. You know, that one kick where it bounced the opposite way, you know, if you go back and look at that, Nathan Cleary had to kick that ball from within his 20 due to a really great defensive set from the Warriors. The bounce of the ball obviously not going our way there. You did wish the Warriors boys were able to turn and probably get more numbers around the ball, or you know, maybe our positioning of our players in that situation as well. Maybe our wingers were probably a little bit too deep, but you got to give a lot of respect for Nathan Cleary and sit kind of around where the boys were sitting, because he's got the boot around him to get in those echelons of what a Matt Burton can get. Obviously, Matty Burton for me probably has the bigger boot out of the two, but you got to give sort of respect in that sort of aspect as well. So massive credit for the Penrith Panthers, 24-8 in that game. But I just wanted to give a little bit more credit to my boys out there, because I really did feel like, as I said, coming into this game, it was like there was no chance for the Warriors. And we honestly, I felt like the commentary around the game should have been a bit more of a surprise that the Warriors are taking it to the Penrith Panthers and upticking, like momentum was shifting into our favor. We're really grinding it with the Penrith Panthers at those points as well. Obviously, I did agree a little bit with the the mid-game commentary from Cooper Cronk and that we did need probably a little bit more flamboyance or something like that to get over the try line against the Panthers. If we were just going to go one out running and continue to go down that track, I think Penrith probably would have just edged it out. But it did show in this game that we got ourselves back into footy playing, very good, consistent football. It wasn't like we were throwing the ball around willy-nilly in that game to beat the Penrith Panthers. A lot of obviously commentary in the game was the Warriors won't be able to grind out the Penrith Panthers. And I felt like for a good, decent effort in that game, I thought the Warriors, their closest way they could actually get this done was to get into that grindy type of football, play really tough for our defense. I thought Fisher Harris and Jackson Ford were absolutely incredible out there. I want to just quickly check the stats of Jackson Ford tackling-wise in this game. 61 tackles in this game. I think it was at 38 at halftime. Absolutely incredible knock from the big man in the middle. We did miss him a little bit for that part of the season towards the run home. And honestly, it felt like a game of what could have been. Obviously the Penrith Panthers could say Mitch Kenny wasn't in the lineup. They could have probably hit a different level. Maybe, Ivan Cleary did say maybe they still had a little bit more in the tank in them to kind of maybe push the margin out or whatever happens here. But like with the Warriors side of things, it's obviously well known that coming into this game, down Mitch Barnett, down Luke Metcalf, down Rocco Berry, down Ali Lotoa, down Jacob Laban, just numerous names throughout this run home in the season we've been down with injury. And boys that are just coming back of injury, getting it back into lineups and switching into different positions in there. So, even in mid-game, we had, Wade Egan go down with a head knock. Obviously, Tanner Boyd go down with a head knock. Like, it wasn't even smooth sailing in some aspects of this game. But I think this is what the Warriors have built into their culture right now. And what Webbies are building into the culture of the New Zealand Warriors right now is consistent, high effort football that we're going to be in the grind. And none led more than our leader in the middle of James Fisher Harris. And once Mitch Barnett comes back, I feel like, as a Warriors fan, I'm pretty happy with what we're going to take to a lot of other sides in the competition. Probably, we could definitely use with a little bit more upside in certain different areas. But I think Luke Metcalf coming back into the lineup in a halves jersey would definitely set the tone for us as well. A lot of people obviously would say, he was leading the Dally M before he got injured. He could have definitely ran his home into a top 4 finish where we didn't even need to be in this predicament for the Penrith Panthers game and get knocked out week 1, but it is what it is. So overall, obviously, I'll quickly touch on the controversies in this game as Warriors fans and stuff. Honestly, I'm not that type of Warriors fan to go out and just call out like, we got robbed in this game because I actually thought that we had some bounce of the ball moments in our area as well, especially with the penalties early on in this game. But I thought definitely the forward pass was a huge moment. 12-8. Our momentum was coming home. You could see my message. I have messages with my mates and I was just like, I'm feeling like we got this. Like we're starting to come home with this. That defensive effort before that bounce of the ball was unreal. And if everything kind of bounced our way, Dallin would have charged it back. I felt like we would have had the momentum to finally crack the Penrith Panthers. How would it finish out? Maybe Penrith would have came home with Nathan Cleary playing the way he was. His kicking game was absolutely elite throughout the game. But, it obviously just felt like a moment that it just summed up kind of our season in the sense of like sometimes the bounce of the ball just doesn't go your way. But what I loved about the Warriors and this performances, even when that bounce of the ball didn't go their way, they wanted to turn up and get back into it. Even, Tanner Boyd going down, we had Tamati Martin going to the 7. I think Maratini Kore made a major line break to almost chase the game late. And then kind of pushing the passes kind of obviously led to the margin pushing out. The other one was obviously the Blaze Talangi knock on in the end goal. For me, that was like, as a Warriors fan, of course, I'm going to call that a knock on every day of the week. I can definitely see as a Panthers fan, if you're going to sit back and say that probably did go backwards, I can see that. It just, compounded when we had that moment from Nathan Cleary, that beautiful kick into the end goal, real low, really tough for a winger, kind of bring that in. Obviously, the trapping of the boot with Dallin, and it kind of bounced over, Dallin knocking it on an end goal. Which ended up being not a bigger moment of what it was because Catewell got it back off the dropout. But, in that one key moment, it had, a knock on in the end goal didn't get called. One on the other side that did get called and put us in some tricky situations. But also what Webby's building into the culture of the Warriors, and I don't want to take that into saying that this would have changed the game in any sense of the world. Like I think the Penrith Panthers, as I said, full strength, they probably would have found a way to win that game towards the end, the way Nathan Cleary was playing. Probably would have ended up being like, maybe a field goal moment or something like that, a 2-point field goal to get them back, because we probably would have, if we did score in these moments, would have got ahead by 2. So very, very proud of my boys. I think that's the biggest thing I want to say about this. Very, very proud of our young boys in this contest as well. I thought Tennisdale Smith coming off the bench was really, really nice in this game. I thought Dimitrik had some nice moments as well. I thought Sam Healy, in some tight areas as well, really had an uptick in the middle with our momentum. I thought Leka was absolutely enormous in this game. First time in the final series, the Panthers having to deal with Leka Lasima. So that's a Panthers team that's going to another echelon. And it looked like Leka was like, he's breaking tackles left, right, and center in this game, I thought. And it looked like it was going to be a tough handle, playing out of position as well. Like, I know a lot of people could say, like, Leka can play center and, maybe we should be looking at him playing center when we do have these injuries and stuff. But, his best position is edge back rower. But, he looked like a guy that could have broke this game open overall. I was calling for him or Sam Healy or Tamati Martin being the guys that break the game open towards the later end, and it kind of ended up kind of swinging that way. Just really unfortunate kind of how it panned out. But massive credit to the Penrith Panthers, their system, what they do so well. Obviously, you can see it out there, and that's the reason why they are champions. They're running home to hopefully, not to hopefully, but to maybe make it a 5 in a row, which is absolutely incredible. And they showed tonight the reason why they did get that. And shout out to Isaiah Papali'i, ex-Warrior. I thought he was enormous. And, with next to Nathan Cleary, I would have probably put him as man of the match in the sense. I thought Nathan Cleary is right up there as well. But I thought IPAP completely changed this game. I thought that we kind of had a lot of good momentum. We had all the ball in our hands until IPAP came on the field, and he completely shifted into the Penrith favour. It was just one of those games. That's what made it so proud to see is, usually Penrith, when they get a stranglehold into a game, it's a struggle to see them lose that stranglehold. And I felt like for a period there, we kind of swung it back into our favour. That's why it was kind of frustrating not hearing that with the commentary in the game, because obviously, they're obviously seeing greatness in a way, and I can understand that you got to write a story when you're commentating and stuff. Penrith Panthers, 5 in a row, all these big moments. They want them to write the story of like the Penrith Panthers. They're just continuing to do what they're doing, but it is what it is. Just quickly, guys, I want to go through my thoughts overall in the season. And again, we're going to double up on this with Wise Up TV coming up Tuesday night. So make sure you tune into that. We'll probably go into more depth of the season, my thoughts overall with the New Zealand Warriors, and why this season has been absolutely incredible. And really, Webby needs to be, I feel like, towards the end of the season, there's been a little bit more pressure from fans, around Webby's selections and stuff like that. And I do feel like a lot of it is unfair and unjust, especially from what he's building through what the Warriors have been this season and in 2023, and even in moments in 2024. I've never been happier, I feel, as a Warriors fan, growing up, in big moments, since pretty much now. I feel like I can go into games knowing that we're going to be as close as we can to many other teams in this competition and be better than the majority of the competition right now. And I really do feel that. There was a stat I said before the game, it was up TV, but we were the second best side for average losses in this competition right now, only next to the Penrith Panthers by 0.1 of a point. So we actually were in so many close games this year. So we're never going to get smoked by any team. But, we obviously didn't win by bigger margins, but that was the Warriors culture, what we're building, especially spearheaded by Mitch Barnett and Fisher Harris up in the middle, players like Jackson Ford, Aaron Clark, who have been absolutely incredible. I feel like, that's such a good platform of what we're building right now. And if you go back to my early thoughts on the Warriors coming into this season, I put us in a top 8 position. I thought that we were going to be in a really heavy fight mid-year to get into a top 8 position. We're going to be in that scatter of multiple different teams. But, we can't discredit what the boys did early on in the season. Major wins against the Manly Seagulls, 13+ when the Manly Seagulls came off of absolutely smoking the Cowboys at home. A lot of people didn't give us a lot of credit to come out in that game and do what we did. That was an amazing performance that the boys put out there. Spearheaded by Luke Metcalf, coming off of the Vegas game. I thought Metcalf has stepped up in so many big moments in this one. Then we go to the Roosters, where, again, a lot of people were writing us off, thinking that was a one-off game against the Manly Seagulls, and we backed it up. And then we go to Campbelltown against the West Tigers, and a lot of people, again, looking at the West Tigers this season, coming off the bottom of the ladder, and everyone was running with that story, and they had a lot of momentum behind them. They played some good footy early on in the season, and the Warriors end up beating them in the hometown at Campbelltown. spearheaded by Lekar Lasima, and that was one of his biggest, like, his jump out games where people were like, oh, okay, we can see this out of him. The Roosters game had a lot of moments from Ali Leota. Lekar, obviously, Luke Metcalf was a big spearhead for the Manly game. Like, you can see the Warriors continue to tick over. We did have some downfalls, obviously, with the Melbourne Storm game, the way that kind of panned out. There was a lot of context around that too, but, Melbourne Storm were well too hot, day game, and that's sort of how Melbourne played out their footy in day games, dry track and Amy Park. But we get back on the winning track. We go Broncos, where we absolutely dominated that game, and towards the last 20 minutes where the Broncos put 2 or 3 tries to come back into that contest, just to be put to bed by Luke Metcalf, where I feel like a couple of goal kicking issues where he probably could have put it to bed earlier. But we end up getting the win due to an amazing kick 50 metres out from Luke Metcalf. Then going to Newcastle, Newcastle coming to us at Christchurch, and again, a Newcastle team that was struggling, and we had a dominant performance in that. Did not look like we were going to lose that game at any sort of point of that game there, 26-12, and just a real clinical performance. And then we saw an uptick in our attack through this period, 26 points there, 30 points against the Cowboys at Magic Round. And for a good period that game, I think we were 30 points to 8. I think coming into half time, it was something close to that. We're absolutely dominant in that game for a period there, and you could kind of see, okay, we can see the clogs start to tick over with the boys. We had obviously a couple of close games coming after that, the Dragons and the Dolphins being 2 close ones. Luke Metcalf again being a big key head there against these other sides. But this is where some injuries and all that started to really take effect into our lineup. We had Kurt Capewell playing out of position in the center position. Then we had Origin come in. We had Mitch Barnett and Kurt Capewell, getting selected in Origin around these periods. And, we come back after a Raiders loss in Auckland, a very close game against the top team in the competition. And when you look back at it, it was definitely a really great performance, I thought, for what we had to contend with. And then we absolutely put beat the brakes off the Rabbitohs for majority of that game there, got 36 points on them. It looked like we broke it open, and we end up backing up against the Sharkies 40-10, which probably is, like, we circle that as our best performance all year. And that was absolutely incredible, the way the boys came together. We've seen the potential of these boys. We've seen what we can build a base on. But then we could see the high end of, Luke Metcalf and what he can do in that 7 jersey, not just as a game controller and contributor. He's a guy that has a bit of X factor that a lot of people are calling for. Lekar Lasima having another year under his belt, and he's going to be that X factor for the future as well. And then, when we had those injuries really hamper us, we had the Panthers game and the Broncos game where we got dominated with injury, with Chance going out, with Luke Metcalf going down, Mitch Barnett going down preview to the Sharks game. And, it just felt like a compounding issue going on with us. And I felt like both those games, we came really close to even swinging it into our end as well. That Broncos game at Suncorp, I remember it personally going into halftime. I think it was 18-6 down. We come out of halftime, we made it close to, I think it was 18-12. And then we obviously had Chance go down with a knee injury. We had Luke Metcalf down with a knee injury as well. And we had Tamati Martin play fullback, play centre, and play halfback in that game. And I think he had to play hooker as well, due to Wade Egan going down with a head knock as well. And, the Broncos being too strong at the end there. But, now seeing the Broncos being in the top 4, you can start to really put it all together with how our season kind of panned out. Then Tanner Boyd came into the lineup, and we had some big moments early on there with the Tigers game was incredible. That Knights game was one that could have gone many different ways, but Lekar Lasima again putting his name up in lights. And towards the run home, we had the Dragons game where, again, it just looked like the wheels were starting to come off a little bit. We had the uptick against the Titans where I felt like the fans got us home there. It was a really incredible crowd out there. Great performance there from the Warriors. And then we go 2 really close games where I felt like we could have pulled it out the fire against the Parramatta Eels, who found form towards the end of the season, and the Manly Seagulls against DC's last game, where DC obviously put it to bed with that point field goal. And there was a lot of different context in that game too, where we could have ended up coming out with the win in that one as well. So very, very good season. As I kind of said to start, before I started rambling on, like, this season was going to be a transitional year. And if that's what we're going to call a transitional year, if that's what we're going to call setting our base for what our future is, the base and the bar has been set so high. It's very similar to pretty much the doggy season of last year. It really did feel like that. Of course, we weren't the best defensive teams in the competition, but we always stuck around that top 4, top 5 defensive side for majority of the year. We became a top 4 side for a long period of time. A lot of people were like, oh, here we go. They're locked in top 4. with injuries were the only reason to hamper us in towards the end at that. And, very similar to the Dogs in 2024, kind of running, limping into the finals and getting bounced out in that first round. But obviously you could see the green shoots. You could see the performances from our young kids of Dimitrik, who had an incredible season. You could see Lek Alasima, touch the big stage. He's touched finals now and looked incredible in finals. Jacob Laban unfortunately had his season cut short in that Dolphins game with the broken leg, but you saw the ability of Jacob now. He's actually got a little bit of that mentality that I was kind of waiting for out of Jacob Laban, to see if he can take another level in that edge back role position, and he did that. New players coming in like a Sam Healy that came over, which the club scouted themselves from the Sharky system with Newtown, and look how he went. He's been absolutely incredible for our run home as well. Been this incredible hooker that we found, and I know a lot of clubs would definitely love to have him, especially right now. Looking at obviously CO Carly and our New South Wales Cup team in the future, we're about to see how they go in their final series, hopefully bringing home the New South Wales Cup. Which would be absolutely incredible to show again the green shoots of the New Zealand Warriors. So this has been an absolute pass mark for me, an A++. What Webby has done in his years as a Warriors head coach, I think has been absolutely incredible. What the Warriors have done in general in this period as well has been absolutely incredible. And I think people need to have a little bit more positivity in some areas of the way everything's kind of turned out. Yeah, sure, we can get better. 100% we can get better. But I feel like, the players that we have there, if we add a couple more pieces or those players hit another new dimension to their game, 100% we're going to be a top 4 team within the next coming years. 100% we're going to be shaking up the competition. And when we get these other kids that are coming through, of a Sio Kali, of a Bishop Neal, a Ronan Byfords, Jeremiah Lamanas, like these kids that are coming through that are all looking absolutely incredible. Like this competition is really going to shake up. And when the Warriors have finally got a development underneath such a good system and a very good head coach that has taken us to 2 final series within this period, pretty much nearly took us to 2 top 4 finishes within 3 years of the New Zealand Warriors. Last year had a little bit of context around what happened with that year. And even coming into this season, people wrote us off. It was just one of those seasons where the Warriors got written off because no Sean Johnson, no Adam Fanor-Blake, no Tohu Harris, no Dylan Walker, which ended up, shocking us mid-season move. No Jazz Tavanga, no Marcelo Montoya. We had a lot of experience stripped out of that lineup that was so good for us in 2023. A lot of people thought this was pretty much the Warriors rebuilding all over again, and we got to find a base. And hell with that, man, we found a base. We found nothing more than a base. So I just want to end it with that before I continue to ramble on. Obviously, it's 22 minutes right now. I'm going to see how much I'm going to edit out and whether I can make this a little bit better, because I know I rambled on in the middle period there. But guys, make sure you tune in on Tuesday night on Wise Up TV, get my overall thoughts again, where I've sat back and I've seen New South Wales Cup, and I want to see little bits of the nitty gritty in this game. But my first thoughts around the season, guys, is nothing but smiles. Webby, you've been such an amazing contributor to this club as a coach, and I want you to continue to do what you're doing. Don't worry about the questioning of your game plans and stuff like that, because when you look at it, your game plans held us in through majority of the season. We've been one of the toughest teams to beat. It's been proven. It's been said by the top. Phil Gillard has come out and said, he's asked a lot of players, who's the toughest team in the competition? And they've come out and said New Zealand Warriors. There's a reason for that. And I feel like we continue to build on a system that we have, and we see upper echelon, we continue on the straight way and not kind of divert off, which a lot of fans are starting to really want us to do. I think that we've got the potential to do very similar things to what Penrith have done in a period of time, or even the Dogs as an extent as well. They're in a very similar boat as us. So guys, get around the club. Honestly, no better time to be a Warriors fan than right now. Obviously, we'd want to see this season under Webby, and we need to back it up next year. I think that's the biggest thing for right now is we had 2023, then we had a down year last year. Again, I know the context that kind of happened within that season. Adam Fanor-Blake wanting to move on, a lot of different things in the background. A lot of people don't really know. 2025, we've hit another amazing height with, guys that want to be at the club with the James Fisher Harrises and stuff. We'll wait and see how the off season plays out. But, a lot of this, guys, we're going to set off on a new road with a spearhead in, Fisher Harris and Mitch Barnett. Both those guys, what they bring to the club is exactly what they've brought this year. And then we sprinkle a little bit of Luke Metcalf and Lek Alasima on top of that. X Factor that's already at the club, and we've already spoken about some news on my channel about Alofiana Khan-Pereira if that ends up happening. But we got Sio Kali and stuff coming through, Brendan Norris's of the world, Potoko as well in Jersey Flag. Like there's all this talent that we have right now. I'm so happy, guys. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy all the rest of your final series out there. If you're not a Warriors fan, hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of Warriors chat on the channel as well. I will get to more of like, rounded content around NRL more in the future. As I said, it's been a really crazy year for me this year, and I've been loving it. But it would be great to get back into more consistent things with rugby league content in the future for next year, especially. So guys, keep an eye out for the channel, but thank you so much. I love you all out there. Enjoy your final series. Up the Wars as always. And yeah, enjoy your final series, guys. Peace out. Take it easy.